America's Newsroom host Bill Hemmer joins me now. Bill, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to read, we have some more reaction coming in from leaders around the world. King Charles says, "My wife and I were most deeply saddened to learn of the death of Pope Francis." And we also have reaction from Vladimir Putin, who says, "I had the privilege of communicating with this outstanding man on many occasions, and I will forever retain the fondest memory of him." So with that, weigh in on this historic news, the passing of Pope Francis at 88 years old.
Hey, Carly, and good morning to you, and a blessed Easter Monday to you and all your viewers today, and coming off the Holy Weekend this past weekend. I am stunned at the video that I was just watching from St. Peter's Square that you were running on your program. I was aware of the meeting that he had with JD Vance, and I know a lot of people characterize it as quick, and I think there was an obvious reason for that. If you look at the photo that the Vatican released yesterday, clearly Francis, his body had swollen from his recent hospitalization in February. The photo they put out, the official photo from the Vatican, didn't even show eye contact between Francis and JD Vance, which I thought that was a telling sign to me, and I noticed it immediately. What I was further taken by was also the extended video that they released from that meeting. And obviously there was an interaction there, and there was a recognition of each other's presence and a sharing of thoughts and words, which I thought was somewhat reassuring. But Francis was a man who came onto the scene from Argentina in a very different light that many people may be even associated with the Catholic Church. You think about the last time the Church had an Italian pope, you'd have to go back to the 1970s, and I know we'll get into the debate in the coming days as to who succeeds Francis. But I will tell you my own personal experience with Francis is the time that he came to the United States, 2015, so that's been 10 years ago, and New York was his first stop. And I'll tell you, Carly, waiting for him to arrive at St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue was quite the moment. We gave that visit a lot of attention. But there was a moment during that trip that did not receive the attention that I thought it should receive. This was a pastoral minister in the sense that he was there to guide and support men and women along their life's path. And that's really his training from Argentina. And on Saturday evening, I'll just share this quick story with you, and I'll allow you to get your other guests on the air. He was in Philadelphia. It was a highly anticipated visit, but it was a Saturday night, and the big splash really came in New York in the days that preceded that. And I felt, as a reporter and as a Catholic myself, watching his visit, that he was the most comfortable when he was in Philadelphia on that late Saturday night, because he had face-to-face interaction with men and women who had come to see him from all over the United States, not just Philadelphia. And I thought he was the most effective, Carly, when he could meet with them and talk to them and hear about their concerns in their faith or their concerns in their life. And he helped them through that moment. I thought this is how this man was trained. And this is his strongest suit as a priest and now as a pope. And that moment, late on Saturday night in Philadelphia, 2015, is what I think about the most today.
Yeah, he was the first pope to visit the U.S. and address Congress. In New York, he addressed the UN General Assembly bill and urged world leaders to promote peace during that 2015 visit that you were referring to. 10 years later, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinctions from Joe Biden. So what do you think, as we're reflecting on his life and what he did on this earth as he's now with the Lord in heaven, what do you think his legacy as a pope will be?
I think he allowed, the Catholic Church to think about, some of these tough issues in different ways. And I know he He was a champion of immigration, but he wasn't a champion of illegal immigration. He was a champion of the poor. And I thought he did a very good job of taking that into the opulence that is Vatican City. And I know you've mentioned that he chose not to live in the Basilica there in St. Peter's, which must be one heck of a place to live your life, by the way. And he chose to live in different housing. I thought that was emblematic of who he was, and not to draw a lot of contrast with him and Benedict, but I remember this story too, that Benedict wore the red shoes, and Benedict, who was Joseph Ratzinger from Germany at the time, and he chose to wear regular shoes. And a lot of people outside the church may think, well, that's no big deal, but the symbolism that so many of these decisions carry for 1 billion Catholics around the world is really significant. I'll just leave you with this one thought. Once we get past the funeral for Francis and we get into the conclave that was shown in Hollywood over the past year and a half, there's going to be there will be a lot of wagers as to who should succeed him. And I would just offer one thought in this. There is going to be a lot of pressure to bring the church back to Italy. There's going to be a lot of pressure to elect the next pope as an Italian. And the reason I mention that, Carly, is because I covered John Paul II, and I've covered Francis, and Benedict's resignation as well. And there's always a debate as to the weight of the Italian aspect of the Catholic Church. And if you think about it, Pope John Paul II from Poland, 1978, I think he was elected. So you went a good 45 years plus where you had a pope from Poland, and you had a pope from Germany, and you had a pope from Argentina. Where will the next pope come from? And there will be a strong push to pull somebody out of Asia, or maybe even out of Africa, or perhaps even the wonderful man that we have on Fifth Avenue, and Cardinal Dolan, a person who I think is an amazing communicator. And I think if the church went with, given the problems we've had in the American Catholic Church for decades, I think that's a strong reason why they did not lean toward Cardinal Dolan. But I am telling you, he is a man who could carry this church forward in a way that many people do not see. But I have seen him, and I know his ability to communicate to people of all walks of life. He would be a strong, strong selection. On the other hand, I'll just leave you with this thought, is that there's going to be a big push to get an Italian back as Pope after going to Poland and after going to Germany and then Argentina.
Yeah. So, Bill, we were talking earlier in the show about how Pope Francis sat down for an interview with 60 Minutes. And in it, you could tell that he had a sense of humor. And there was one joke that he told during the 60 Minutes interview. He was talking about immigration. And these are his words. He said, Irish brought whiskey, Italians brought the mafia. And then you could tell that the moderator was a little taken aback, and he said, it's a joke, don't take it too seriously. And, you know, that's something that he had that probably worked in his benefit, and Cardinal Timothy Dolan certainly has that sense of humor as well. So unique perspectives. Final thoughts to you as we cover this together.
It's Easter Monday, and I hope everybody had a great Easter celebration with their family and close friends. And I certainly did back home in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I would just say, you know, this story will develop. We'll take it piece by piece, and I guess my final comment before I see you in person later today, Carly, would be, if I had a vote, it'd be Timothy Cardinal Dolan.
Bill, thank you so much for joining us. You will be picking up the reins on this very story at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Carly.
Jonathan, back out to you. Just final thoughts in the last 30 seconds that we have.
We will have time to discuss who will be the next pope. We will have time to discuss also all the funeral rites. But let me tell you, Pope Francis, in his last minutes of life and hours, he taught us what it means to live and to die, and he did it beautifully.
Amen to that. Both heartbreaking and joyous news. Jonathan, thank you so much. Fox and Friends starts right now.
All right, here we go. Fox News alert. Pope Francis has passed away at the age of 88. The Vatican announcing his passing this morning following a weeks-long battle, actually a months-long battle with double pneumonia.
And senior foreign correspondent Greg Palkot is live in London with the latest. Greg.
Hey, folks. Yeah, we have been tracking this dramatic and momentous news for the last couple of hours coming from the Vatican. Just 1 day since appearing on the balcony of St. Peter's for his Easter message, where tens of thousands gathered in Vatican Square there after weeks of sometimes critical illness. 88-year-old Pope Francis is passed away. He was the first pope from the Americas. He was a symbol of humility and compassion for the poor and downtrodden. Now he is gone. Here's part of a brief message from the Vatican. Dearest brothers and sisters, with deep sorrow, I must announce the death of our Holy Father Francis. At 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and His church. He taught us to live the values of the gospel with fidelity, courage, and universal love, especially in favor of the poorest and most marginalized. By the way, that comes from, folks, a 77-year-old Irish American who is the Cardinal Camerlengo right now, basically the administrator that takes care of things as this interim period will commence at the Vatican. Remember, this is also just a day since the Pope met with Vice President JD Vance. Certainly he, a Catholic convert, as you've noted, just in the past couple of years, but also a person who has had some, shall we say, differences with the Pope, but a sign on both sides, I would say, of the kind of effort to compromise, to come together that Pope Francis so championed. A lot of reaction we've been tracking, folks, from around the world, not just from the 1.3 billion Catholics, but leaders from all over. Let me just give you 3 or 4. French President Macron saying he was a man of humility. Irish President saying the same thing, that he was a papacy with a unique humility. Tony Blair, former British Prime Minister, calling him an extraordinary and devoted servant. The White House itself showing in a post a picture of the Pope and President Trump, simply saying, rest in peace. Again, this Pope filled in after the 2013 resignation from Pope Benedict XVI. He was voted in after a couple of ballots in the famous conclave setting, and he has set a standard for speaking out on a lot of different issues, on climate change, inequality, you name it, and also speaking up for immigrants, refugees, victims of war, distress, hunger, poverty, you name it. This was a man of humility right from driving around in a Ford Focus. The next days will lead up to the funeral, and then, as we've been just discussing, the conclave, the consistory, where a new pope will be chosen. Back to you guys.
Thanks so much, Greg.